And today I want to sort of pull it all together and, if possible, with the people in the room, sort of brainstorm about what's next. Where are the very big challenges? And my challenges that I address are always in some applied area, but always with this foundational questions that need to be answered in order for the applications to be successful. And I'm going to continue with that. So if it sounds too abstract, too foundational, let me know and I can contextualize it and see how it might be applied. I'll be talking about two topics here. The one that I'll spend the most time on is how can we design AI to inspire human creativity? And that question is a precursor to how can AI be able to learn human values? Right now, AI learns from data sets. Our past is wrought with all sorts of bias and discrimination and issues related to society trying to be good, but always not being good. Yet the AI learns from the good and the bad and the ugly. And how can we guide it so that it not only tells us what we learned from the past, but guides it towards our current value system? Creativity is one of our value systems. We value it. We think it's special when people produce something creative. We think creative people are remarkable. So it is one of our values. I'll spend a little bit of time, for those of you who heard my talk earlier in the year, some of our recent results on does AI actually help students learn to program. Now, what does that have to do with creativity? And basically, creativity is foundational to learning. In order for you to learn new knowledge, you are practicing a kind of creativity where you assimilate new knowledge into your human brain. Okay, so let me just spend a few minutes to tell you why I like to focus on AI for creativity instead of what everybody else is doing, which is AI to be competent at performing some task, or learning to be competent at performing some task. First of all, creativity is practiced by all of us. I'm not talking about artists, although artists are creative. I'm not talking about focusing on how artists are creative. It's how are all of us creative. And we do that in many ways within our work lives. I got this window covering me, my words, in education and in our social interactions. And it's actually foundational. If we weren't creative, we would be unable to learn. It's foundational to scientific innovation. As we do research, if we don't create new knowledge, there's no advance. And so if you think of creativity not just as big C, the thing that Einstein did, or Picasso, and think about all of us as doing everyday creativity, thinking how AI can support us in that improves the quality of our lives. So in my AI research, I've been doing AI research since the 80s. What if we were to realign the goals of artificial intelligence so it focuses on, again, interaction with AI? The AI isn't creative in a vacuum. It's through interaction with humans, from common to extraordinary acts of creativity, that we didn't distinguish that it was only interesting when it's extraordinary, but also everyday creativity. Then in my CS education research, because I have kind of two hats, how can the concepts of creativity create an inclusive learning environment that encourages curiosity? Students learn better when they're curious. Being in a state of curiosity is defined as being in a state of wanting to know. And that's what curiosity is. Wanting to know means you think there's something you don't know that's valuable to you, which is a kind of creativity. So I want to finish after I present some of my research with a question. What if we shifted our goals from prediction accuracy to a learning goal that focuses on enhancing human creativity. If we look at, everybody's heard of ChatGPT. If we look at ChatGPT, what is the goal? What is it programmed to do? And it's to predict the next word at the fundamental level, but more importantly, to be able to give you an answer that's responsive to your prompt. In some sense, it is accurate, it's relevant, and that you like the answer. Those are the goals. And what OpenAI and other AI companies are doing now to optimize it is they put a reinforcement learner that can learn from hand annotated user responses as to whether the response from ChatGPT did that. Was it relevant, coherent, and did the user like the answer? So we're still focusing on accuracy and satisfaction. It's possible to have that reinforcement learner optimize for enhancing creativity. What would that look like? And then finally, what if we focused on diversity rather than correctness, which is something that creativity in its foundation is about, that it's not about getting the right answer. Often we don't know what the right answer, and there may not be a right answer. What if we were interested in novel or diverse answers rather than the right answer? Okay, so now I'll just go through some of the background. Some of you may have seen this or may not have seen this, but this is a little bit about the trajectory. I've spent many, many years building AI systems with increasing AI abilities. Some of it was done here. The coevolutionary work was done here with Josiah, who's in the room. The probabilistic learning, novelty and surprise was done with Kaz at the School of Architecture, Design and Planning. Reinforcement learning I did with Catherine Merrick. So a lot of the foundational work was actually done here in Australia on increasing AI abilities. This idea of HCI and modalities, something I really got interested in after I left here, and that was looking at how do we interact with systems in a way that is productive, which is, I guess, the baseline, but more importantly, is rewarding and helps us be more creative in our work. So those modalities have varied from things we see today, like instruction and prompts, to having conversations, to gesture interaction, tangible interaction, and recently in emotional feedback, that emotions are something that humans express when they're with each other. That is a critical component of being able to communicate with your collaborator. What if AI could do that? So now my research has been looking at interaction design for co-creative AI. And it's a confluence of two very different research areas. There's been the AI people who want to build computers to be creative. And then there are the people who build applications that are creativity support, with the humans being creative. Generative creative system, the painter's fool, was a very early one, which it was a AI system that painted. And the creativity support tools are like Photoshop or Procreate, and that's where the human is the creative one and it's just the tool. When those come together, you have an opportunity for the AI to be creative and for the human to be creative, and you bring those two together and it changes what you're looking for in a system. Some examples, there's a very long history of doing this kind of research, range from improvisation, where the human and the AI are creating together real time, live, and the AI is able to respond real time, like the robot on the left that plays music next to a human jazz pianist. And on the right, there's the turn taking, where you have the AI is taking turns on creating a drawing. So it can sense what's drawn and it can add something meaningful to the drawing. In the music, it can sense what the person is playing and it can play something meaningful at the same time. No sheet music, it's sensing, it's hearing in the case of the robot, and it's seeing in the case of the drawing program. Now, fast forward to what we see now with DALL-E 2 and things like GitHub Copilot, where all the AI has is your prompt. It can't see what you're drawing. It can't hear what you're playing in music. It can see what you say, only what you say. And it's been extremely powerful in having and opening up this area of conversation as a way of interacting with AI, where the output can be images on the left and code on the right. And it's very competent because the language models are so large. It's a different kind of interaction. I've been having conversation with people who do research in this space. It may be a new way to do science. If we have these large language models, they, in a sense, provide a representation of knowledge that we have not had before. What do we do with it? Rather than worry about, is it good? Is it bad? Is it going to help us? Is it going to overtake us? If, as researchers, we think about this as what they are, foundation models of knowledge based on training on lots and lots of data, and they're remarkably capable. What can we do with that? So what I would like to do is focus on this interaction. And when we look at sense making, how do humans collaborate with each other? We see two kinds of sense making in humans. One is functional, where the humans are focusing on the thing they're creating. It could be the music, it could be the drawing, it could be the code, if they're coding together. It could be the story if they're writing a story together or a proposal together. So that functional sense making is the ability of the collaborators to understand what they're working on. AI is pretty much focused on that, right? Even in the ChatGPT models, all it can sense is what you type, and all it can produce is content in response to that. There's another kind of sense making, and that's how we communicate with each other, either verbally or through our eyes or through our emotions. And that interactional sense making isn't only phenomenology. Sorry about that. It's also a kind of development of an empathy and a theory of mind, where you can, during a collaboration, you can almost anticipate what someone's thinking, or you know something about them, so you can understand what they've done before that might influence what they're going to do next. AI doesn't do that very well, if at all. Some systems do, affective systems, but not very much. What if that was also part of the interaction design? So one of my PhD students, Jeba Rizwana, we published in a journal this ontology of how humans and AI can interact. What is this space? And the part in the gray is the part that hasn't been very well researched. How do humans and AI intentionally communicate? Think of the prompts in the ChatGPT. I am typing something in intentionally, and the AI is typing something back. And then there's the human to AI consequential. And consequential is facial expressions, ways that I communicate through gesture and other modes that you pick up on, because you're human and you can understand human communication isn't just what I say, but it's how I behave. This is really important in improvisation, like dance, or how you work together when you are in an emergency situation, you need to evacuate. So there's a lot of situations where that consequential communication is essential. And then the AI to human communication has been, until we saw ChatGPT, we saw very little of it. That the AI was operating in a conversational or communication mode. With those missing, we decided to run a couple studies, see how that works. This is a ideation research project where we were looking at how can AI models of novelty, similarity, co-occurrence inspire a human designer, and studying their cognition. So there's no communication here. It is only the human is drawing on one canvas and the AI is inspiring on the other canvas. The AI can sense the image and put it into a vector representation to identify similar sketches. It can see what the human has been asked to design, so it has words that it can use word embedding to come up with similar concepts and retrieve images that are similar. There's no communication between the human and the AI other than through the thing they're designing together. When we studied human cognition in terms of ideation, framing and reframing, which is how humans might restate the problem to push it into a more creative place, and what kind of creativity was happening from combinatorial to transformational. And this was interesting. I'll give you a little bit of the fundamentals. We actually built our own deep learning models, and we built them so that we could have access to that vector space in the latent representation, so that we could use that numerical representation of a sketch or the numerical representation of the words to move around in a space to find out what was a word that was conceptually similar or distant, what was a sketch that was visually similar or distant, was possible because we had these networks where the internal representation units were vectors of numbers. And so you could use cosine similarity. We built these. We used existing algorithms to build them, like RNNs and autoencoders, but we trained it up on the data ourselves. We curated the data, and we ranged from curating data as sketches to curating data as very rich visual images of creative designs. And then we did a study. We were interested in whether the AI models of conceptual similarity or visual similarity had an impact on ideation. So the study was two conditions: don't use the similarity or difference, and randomly select from a group of vaguely similar images, or inspire incrementally based on how similar it is. And we found that with the AI inspiration, that ideation lasted longer, new ideas lasted longer. We've done a lot of studies of human cognition during ideation. This curve of having things drop off, the number of new ideas dropping off, is typical in a design session. You can't continue to produce new ideas at a constant rate or an increasing rate, or you would never converge and come up with a solution. But you do want to keep that ideation going throughout. And we found with the AI inspiration, we were able to shift that curve up, and ideation continued at a higher rate throughout the process, even though it still gradually declined. If you have any questions about that, I can go into more detail, but basically it was better with the AI inspiration than without. And then we thought, well, what happens if we add these AI to human communication, or human to AI consequential communication? So that diagram at the bottom is showing we're introducing emotional feedback, we're introducing conversational content between the AI and the human. Did that change it? And so again, we use the same AI as before. So remember those deep learning models, we have that latent space, we're inspiring conceptually and visually along some spectrum of similarity to novelty. Same AI. All that changed was whether the AI had any information about the human emotion in selecting what to do next. Should I give you something similar? Should I give you something different? Should I pass? And we found that the results were that when the emotional feedback was used to guide the AI inspiration, they thought that the AI was more cooperative, it was more understanding, they had more interest in the task. I mean, these are the things that we sort of expected. So it might be, confirmation bias. But we had the participants do both conditions. And so they were unaware of when the AI had the emotional feedback and when the AI didn't have the emotional feedback. And generally, they really liked working with the one with emotional feedback, and the other one, they didn't like the AI as much. They thought it was a little irritating, not as interesting to work with. So then we thought, well, what if we personalized it through some sort of conversation? Same AI, again, in both the same recurrent neural networks, latent space, same AI ability. And now we just had the interaction be either through buttons and sliders or through some persona called the Creative Pen Pal, which had a conversation with them and responded with like, thank you, and just being nice. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't like my idea. I won't do that again. Just made it a little bit personal. And then we found that, again, same AI, they, first of all, they changed their stance. Maybe this is obvious now, but they didn't think of it as a tool anymore. They thought of it as a partner. That's significant because we ascribe, as humans, we ascribe things to partners that we don't ascribe to tools. As soon as you call it a partner, some of those other things are going to start to be in the person's mind when they're not there with a tool. And it started this whole thing of anthropomorphizing. And we've seen big arguments lately on, should AI, ChatGPT AI, use first person I? Is that a problem? When it does use first person AI, you feel more engaged in the task, you feel more connected, you feel more like working with it than some impersonal or some tool. And this was pretty overwhelming. They were more engaged when they were conversing. They thought they were more creative when they were engaged in the conversation. And you know, that could be true. There are some studies that show if you're happier, you're more engaged, you're more creative. If you're not happy, you're kind of distracted or bored, you're not very creative. They thought the AI was smarter. Same AI. In fact, very similar responses in the two conditions. But in the conversing condition, it ascribed that the AI was actually smarter. It was more in sync with my thoughts. It was more AI-ish. I mean, it was really interesting to hear what they had to say when we didn't change the AI, just the interface. So then we started a study. This scared us a little bit because they started anthropomorphize. They started to think of the AI as another person, and we go, uh-oh, AI is not ready for this. It does not have all those characteristics that humans have, like it doesn't know what's right and wrong. It doesn't understand the difference between hate speech and normal speech. It doesn't know when it's stealing someone's data. It has no conception of any of that. It's not human, but all of a sudden people are thinking it's like human. It's behaving like a human, so it must have these other abilities. So we switched our whole way of doing research and dove into design fictions. Now we weren't building the AI anymore. We were building stories about AI. And this is a methodology called speculative design, where you build a design that is possible in the future. And then you have that person experience that design through a story or a video. They don't use a system, they read about a system. They read about a future scenario. And then we brought them together, had them do reflection surveys immediately after reading it, and then brought them into focus groups to have discussions. And this methodology is really fascinating because it allows us to jump ahead into a proposed future without having to build the system and without having to worry that the usability of the system is influencing the person's perception of AI and their perception of the usability, usefulness. And we found very interesting themes come up that have to do with when humans and AI are creating together. And that has to do with ownership, leadership, accountability. Now, we know all these from the literature on the ethics of AI, responsible AI. What was interesting was to see, what do people who are being creative with AI worry about? Because that should be integrated into all design phases. We shouldn't be just throwing a GPT out there without thinking about the issues in designing the interaction, because we've seen that the interaction design can make a big difference on the person's understanding of what they're doing. Just what they're doing is different. So one of the things that we found was the strongest indicator of whether users are worried about AI or not is whether they perceive the AI as a tool or they perceive the AI as a collaborator. Because if they perceive the AI as a tool, they're not worried. If they perceive the AI as a collaborator, they get worried. And this study was done, I don't know, a year and a half ago before ChatGPT was out there. And where are we today? People think about ChatGPT, the AI, as a collaborator. You know, they don't think about it as just a tool. So we should be thinking as researchers, now what do we do? What do we do about designing that interaction that acknowledges that people's perception of the AI and what they're worried about will be significantly different as we cross into this collaborator approach? Now I'm going to just jump off for a few minutes and talk about what does this mean for students learning to program, where learning is a kind of a creative act. And we wanted to focus very specifically on, do code generation tools based on large language models, do they help them students learn or not? What does this have to do with creativity? If the AI gives you the answer, does that stifle creativity or does that encourage creativity? And in the context of students, we want it to encourage learning. We don't want it to stifle learning. So will they just use it to cheat or will they use it to actually learn? So we based a study on some work we did with IBM Research, where they're working with us to think about, now that we have these large language models that can produce code like Copilot, you don't want the individual to be working at the prompt engineering level. That's really primitive for a coder. Maybe you do for students, but not for coders. And so they began to think about what the person will be doing at the front end could be mirrored by what the AI can do at the back end. And if you mirror that, how do you bring that ability to the AI through this conditioning preamble? So you've begun to see with prompt engineering, people are thinking about, well, before you ask the AI, what's the rest of this code? You can say, you are a tutor. I am a student. I'm trying to learn how to code. I'm struggling with how to get started with how to write some code that operates on Pascal's triangle. And it'll come back and it will work in a tutor mode. It will say, well, what are the basics of Pascal's triangle? Do you understand that first? And what are the basics of what arrays you need to set up? So it will work back and forth with you because you did a conditioning preamble to tell the AI, you're a tutor. I don't want the answer. I want you to help me. And that's turned out to be really effective. So what do we do with that? That's appropriate in professional context, but what do we want why do we want students to use ChatGPT? One is the conversational interface allows each student to get personalized attention. They don't have to ask it something that you have set up in the interface for them to be able to ask. They can ask whatever they want. It's knowledge-based, so the ChatGPT actually has quite a lot of knowledge, access to a very large database of information, much broader than maybe the tutor in the course has. And so it's more open-ended. It's open-ended in the sense that what ChatGPT does with you today could be different to what it does with you tomorrow, because it's had a day to learn, not only from you, but from other people using it. And then versatile, it can create content, it can help you, it can debug, it can explain. And we looked at a study of the usability of code generation tools. This is a published study where they were looking at experienced programmers using Copilot and found mixed results, that it didn't help them, but they liked it. And we thought that was interesting. They thought it was better than the IDEs that they use with a little bit of AI in it. But they didn't understand what Copilot was giving them, and so they weren't able to use it. But they thought it inspired them and it helped them find the right answer, even though it didn't give them the right answer. But they're experienced programmers. What if you do it with students who aren't experienced? So we wanted to see whether these AI tools, first of all, could help them learn and work constructively. And that last one, did it engage students who might otherwise hesitate in asking for support? Those are the students who feel like they aren't really understanding what's going on. And if they ask a question, it will show how much they don't know if they went to a person, like the instructor or tutor. And why do a research study? We could do it many ways. A lot of people are basing it on their own experience. The PhD student I have working on this keeps telling me this is what's going to happen. And I say, how do you know that? And he goes, because that's what I would do. I said, but it doesn't matter what you would do. You actually have to collect data on a lot of people. You're one person. And also we wanted to have just some baseline data that if we ran it again next year, would things be really different? So we have three conditions. One, no AI, one chat conversation, and the other is the Copilot. And we did between subjects. They only do one condition. So they would do a pre-task assessment. So we give them a quiz on the concepts that doing the tasks should teach them. They do the tasks with no help, with an AI chatbot and with Copilot, only one of those. And then they get that assessment, see if there's any learning gain. And then they have an interview. So what we found, we're only partway into it, done 4 students. And we found that it depends. So the highly confident, this is the person who thinks AI, they're confident about AI, that the AI knows better, doesn't even verify the code, just reuses the answer. The frustrated, they don't understand how to do it. They can't even get ChatGPT to help them, and they give up. They say AI is not helpful. And then there's the cautious, and the cautious says it's not very confident that the code is any good and will actually verify the accuracy. And then the curious, they go way beyond what they're asked to do, and they think this is pretty cool, this AI, and they do a lot more than they were asked to do. And then the innovative, they actually get it to generate a whole bunch of code that was not even asked for. So what this shows us is that it depends on, coming back to that design fiction study, the person's stance towards AI. What do they think about the AI will influence whether it helps them learn or not. Just like the study with Creative Pen Pal, what they thought about the AI helped them be more creative, or so they thought. So this attitude towards AI is everything. Okay, so now I'm gonna just back up. This is the last slide. I'm gonna take a drink of water. I think that the goals of machine learning are too narrow. They're focusing on accuracy and satisfaction. I think if we can align machine learning goals with creativity and other human values, sorry. We'd get somewhere else. So one of the things I've been thinking about, writing about, is what do we value? And can we set reward functions that are about our values? I mean, we already do. You can think that accuracy is a value, that the results of the AI accurately reflect what's in the data, right? That's how they've been trained. And that's how we train AI. We train it so that we give it a training set, and then we give it a test set. And if the test set accurately predicts what we know to be the answer, then the model is robust. So we've already got accuracy as a value, and we've learned how to train our models for accuracy. Can we optimize and train our AI models for other things like creativity or diversity, inclusion, to remove bias in the results? And if we can do that, how do we build those reward functions? Accuracy, we know how to do. Creativity, we might not know how to do. So I think the future of AI needs to open up what it rewards the AI for. And interaction designs, that's my AI hat. New AI models, foundationally different from current. And then the interaction design. So interaction modality matters. That when we think about it, we want to lower the bar so that more users will engage. So we need to leverage the conversation, not shut it down. And that there's a lot of people writing about, should the AI stay as a tool, or can it become a collaborator? And are there ethical issues in crossing that boundary? And that AI anthropomorphism could be the end of humans as we know it. I mean, there's a lot of commentary out there. And I think as interaction designers, we need to take that very seriously and address it. Don't just say, oh, academics are generally optimistic. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Maybe it won't be fine. But we're not going to get rid of anthropomorphism. We do it all the time. We just need to make sure that as we continue along the path of anthropomorphism, that we are mindful of how humans are very happy to go beyond the abilities of the AI and ascribe other abilities it doesn't have. And they'll begin to trust it and work with it in the way they might work with a human, not appreciating that it's not human. And so it leads to, I think interaction designers should also be very mindful of the need for widespread AI literacy. We have to make sure people understand what AI is and what it means to interact with it. And I'll finish there. Sorry about the coughing. But I'd like to have any kind of question, answer, interaction, any thoughts about this, both at the machine learning level and at the interaction design level.
I'll ask you one thing. I didn't hear anything about actually humans' intention. When does the intention of the person become really integral part of interacting with AI?
Well, when we move to the prompt engineering, arguably we capture intention in what the person says they want in a way that we haven't really done very well when it's been like a sketching tool. because all the sketching tool does is capture the sketch. But when we went to large language models, we started to see that human intention was embedded in the interaction through language. And so I think if we can leverage that prompt style, we capture intention in parallel with like playing music or drawing sketches.
Anyone online got a question? Well, I guess you can put it in the chat, which I can read out. Or you can unmute.
So Mary, can I ask you have like identify those people in different groups, right? So cautious and innovative. So are they always mutually exclusive, or there are stages? I mean, because the persons might change their view over time. I mean, from a very suspicious one to someone who completely buying. So how do you see that?
So I think it can change within a session, and it can change over time. I think knowing that these are characteristics or different stances helps us design the interface to recognize when the person is being highly confident, for example, and you might say, hey, hang on, you should check that. Or the AI could say, you should always check whether I have the right answer. I think just recognizing them is the first step. I don't think that one person takes one stance and stays with it forever. In fact, one of the studies we're doing is we're looking at their stance as a pre-survey. And then we have them interact with the AI for a while to perform a task, a design task, something I'm doing at Torrance University here. And then we ask them their questions again, almost the same questions, a little bit more, to see if their stance changed just by the experience of interacting with it. And I see there's a new study out by Chalmers University of students using AI and whether they thought it would be helpful or not. And only 25% of the students who answered the survey had experience with ChatGPT. I wonder if that percentage went up, we would see very different answers. So yes, I think our stance changes with our experiences. Recognizing the different stances are important though, because they lead to such different modes of usage by students.
Geez, I shouldn't dominate, but I'm curious, so what level of programming skills do the students have in a study when they come in?
In the one that we're doing,
Yeah.
they've had about one semester of Java instruction, and it was their first programming course. And so they're in their second one. And so they're looking at things like loops and arrays and conceptual understanding of those. Those are the two concepts we're working with.
So the task they're tackling, well, okay, let me give you background. I think one of the important things that we should change our curriculum to focus on, frankly, is to have students know that these are tools they'll use, but they have to be masters of the tools, and they have to be confident they understand the code they produce with the tool, enough to sign off and take responsibility for it. So I don't see how anyone can do that if they don't, for example, they can't read the code and answer some questions about it or whatever. So, but that's the background. I was curious to know where the students.
So that's where we recognize the highly confident. So we have students who did the pre-task questions, they wrote some code with the help of the AI, and they did the post-task. And during the follow-up interview, we asked them to explain their code.
Okay.
And the ones who couldn't explain the code realized that they were overconfident about using the AI. And they tried to figure it out while we were talking to them, but they felt that that reflection and describing the answer to us was where they learned, not when the AI generated it for them. And so that learning did not happen with the AI. The learning happened after the AI gave them the answer.
Yeah, so you can ask the AI to explain things and
Yes.
lots of comments in. I just wonder that suggests well, a way to use it, but you use it and you put comments in explaining it yourself, and then you've got what the
Right.
AI explanation is. Compare it, see if you think you got it right.
And we've thought about this before here in this room and also in other venues I've been in. That if AI becomes very competent at helping students get the answer to whatever you ask them to do, maybe the knowledge gain is in the explaining. And so it does change the way we assess students. And how does that scale up? If you have 1,000 students, you can't have each of them explaining their code.
Use a ChatGPT to ask them the questions.
You can. In other places, they're thinking of all sorts of ways. They produce a video where they explain it. And so you can actually see their face making the words, they're not writing it.
Generating by.
And then you can get that transcript automatically out of the system, and then you can have the ChatGPT tell you, was that the right explanation? I mean, there are ways to scale it up. But what it means is we may have to think again about what does it mean to have knowledge gain? Is it just the answer? Or is it that reflection process on the answer? I mean, if you look at Jennifer Turn at University of Washington and other people like her, where they think that's where people are actually learning, is when they reflect on their learning. Doing is not the thing. Doing gives you the basis for learning, but it isn't the learning, it's the reflection. And if that's the case, the AI is there to help you do it, but you still need to reflect.
So can we make AI also to make the students reflective? I mean, if the learning happens when someone is asking the questions, we can rather than just explaining the stuff, we can make the student reflect then.
Yeah, so coming back to this diagram here, these are for professional software developers that IBM has been thinking about how large language models like Copilot can help professional designers. They don't need to reflect, they just need the right answer, right? They need their code to work and they need it to satisfy specs. What we want is we want students who code in order to learn, not to produce a product. So one of these things that the AI might do is engage in reflective conversation, where it says, okay, here's some code, explain how this works. And then the student explains and says, no, that's not right. That's not how arrays work. You got that wrong, you got this wrong. And so the so-called conditioning preamble here, when the student is engaging with the AI that was developed for learning, not for coding, which is what they are now, it would engage in that sort of Socratic conversation. Tell me how this works.